My name is Deborah Mitchell, and I was 30 years old when my parents finally said the quiet part out loud. I'm not going to pretend I grew up in some nightmare household. My parents weren't abusive. They fed me, clothed me, kept a roof over my head, made sure I went to school. On paper, it looked fine. But there's a difference between being raised and being valued. And in my family, only one child ever truly was. That child wasn't me. My older sister, Andrea Mitchell, is 3 years older than I am. And from as far back as I can remember, the rules were different for her. Softer, kinder, more forgiving. Andrea didn't just get second chances, she got infinite ones. If she failed, it was because the system was unfair. If I succeeded, it was expected, barely worth mentioning. When I was 12 and Andrea was 15, we both wanted bikes. I saved birthday money, skipped snacks, did extra chores for 3 months straight, bought a used bike from a neighbor for $40. The tires didn't match and the chains slipped sometimes, but it was mine. Andrea mentioned wanting a bike once at dinner. The next weekend, my dad took her to a bike shop. She came home with a brand new mountain bike that cost more than my entire savings at the time. When I asked why Dad said Andrea needed reliable transportation, apparently I didn't. High school wasn't any better. I made honor roll every semester. Andrea barely scraped by, but she was popular, so that mattered more. When she got a C in English, my parents hired her a tutor. When I got a B in chemistry, my only B mom told me I needed to study harder. I told myself I wasn't bitter. Maybe I was when I was younger, but by my 20s I'd accepted it. Some families have favorites. Mine did. Andrea got the attention, the praise, the financial safety net. I got really good at figuring things out on my own. In hindsight, that ended up saving me. After high school, I went to community college and paid for it myself, working nights at a shipping warehouse. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. loading trucks. $12 an hour. Exhausting. Miserable. But it paid tuition and kept me fed. Andrea went to a 4-year university 2 states away. My parents covered everything tuition, a new car, spending money. When I asked if they could help me buy textbooks one semester, Dad said it would build character if I worked for what I wanted. Character, right. I finished my associate degree, landed a job as an insurance adjuster, and started from the bottom. I lived in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates who never cleaned the bathroom, drove a car that stalled at red lights. But every month I saved something, sometimes $50, sometimes $300. My goal was simple: own a house before I turned 30. Everyone told me it was impossible. At 27, I proved them wrong. 3 bedrooms, a ranch house 40 minutes outside the city. Needed work, but it was solid. I put down 20% every dollar I'd scraped together and signed the papers alone. No help, no gifts, no congratulations. My parents visited once, walked through, pointed out everything that needed fixing, stayed 20 minutes, and left. But I loved that house. Every creaky floorboard, every crooked cabinet, it was mine. And nobody could take it away. Or so I thought. The first year I lived in that house, I didn't take a single vacation. Every spare dollar went back into it. New insulation before winter hit. Replacing warped floorboards 1 room at a time. Fixing plumbing that rattled like it might explode every time I turned on the shower. I learned how to patch drywall from YouTube videos, learned which tools were worth buying and which ones were cheap lies in plastic packaging. I learned how to be patient with things that didn't come together right away. I learned how to be proud quietly. On Friday nights, instead of going out, I'd sit on the floor with a slice of takeout pizza and stare around the living room, imagining what it would look like when I was done. Not perfect, just solid, stable, mine. The kind of place where you could breathe without waiting for something to fall apart. My parents never came back after that first visit. They'd mention the house occasionally, usually in passing. Comments like, "That commute must be tiring," or, "Have you thought about selling and moving closer?" Never you did well. Never. We're proud of you. I stopped expecting it. 3 years passed faster than I expected. By the time I turned 30, the neighborhood had changed. Families moved in. The grocery store down the road expanded. Property values crept upward, then jumped. A realtor left a flyer on my door one afternoon offering to list my house because it had excellent resale potential. Out of curiosity, I looked it up. My house was worth almost 60% more than what I'd paid for it. I closed the browser and went back to painting my bathroom. I wasn't interested in selling. I liked my life. I liked knowing where everything was. I liked my quiet mornings and my small routines. I'd put down roots not just financially, but emotionally. This wasn't an asset to me, it was home. Andrea, during those same 3 years, had been living across town with her boyfriend Marcus. Marcus was fine, polite, not unkind. He worked sales at a car dealership and did okay when commissions were good. Andrea worked part-time at a boutique and talked a lot about eventually doing something creative. Between them, they made enough to live comfortably, but they spent like money regenerated overnight. New phones every year, weekend getaways, eating out constantly. Saving was always something they said they'd start next month. Rent kept going up, and Andrea kept complaining about throwing money away. Then she got pregnant. Everything changed overnight. Suddenly, renting wasn't acceptable anymore. Suddenly, Andrea didn't just want a house, she needed one, because apparently you can't raise a baby without hardwood floors and a backyard. I heard all of this through my mother. She started calling once a week, then twice. Updates on Andrea's house hunt, like it was a group project we were all involved in. How stressful it was. How unfair the market had become. How Andrea was so overwhelmed. I made sympathetic noises and went back to my life. Then one Sunday, Dad called. He said he wanted me to come over for dinner that night. A family meeting. He used that phrase like it was normal. It wasn't. My family doesn't do family meetings unless someone wants something. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived at 6, Mom had the good dishes out, the ones she only uses for holidays, or when she's trying to impress someone. Andrea and Marcus were already there. Andrea was 6 months along, visibly pregnant, wearing a flowy dress and smiling too much. Everyone was cheerful, too cheerful. We ate, made small talk. Andrea talked about the baby's room. Marcus showed me ultrasound photos. Mom brought out dessert apple pie. My favorite. She hadn't made that in years. That's when I knew. Dad cleared his throat and leaned forward, hands clasped like he was about to pitch an investment opportunity. We wanted to talk to you about something important, he said. And just like that, the ground shifted under my feet. We wanted to talk to you about something important. Dad repeated, his voice calm in that rehearsed way that meant he'd already decided how this conversation was supposed to end. I set my fork down slowly. The room felt smaller all of a sudden, like the air had thickened. Okay, I said. Andrea shifted in her chair. Marcus stared at his plate. Mom folded her hands together, nodding as if Dad had just said something wise. As you know, Dad continued, Andrea and Marcus are starting a family. I resisted the urge to point out that we'd spent the entire dinner talking about exactly that. They need stability, Mom added quickly. A real home. Somewhere permanent. Right, I said carefully. The market's rough. It really is, Mom agreed. Everything's so expensive now. They've been looking for months and nothing suitable is within their budget, especially with a baby coming. I glanced at Andrea. She was still smiling, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. That's tough, I said. Maybe they need to expand their search, or consider something that needs work. Dad leaned forward. That's actually what we wanted to discuss. My stomach dropped. Your house, he said. It's perfect for them. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, good schools, everything a young family needs. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I'm sorry, what? You live there alone, Mom said gently, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. 3 bedrooms just for you. Meanwhile, Andrea needs space for a whole family. So she should buy a 3-bedroom house, I said slowly, like I did. Dad waved his hand. You bought at the right time. You got lucky with the market. That wasn't luck, I said. I saved for 6 years. I worked nights. I fixed the place up myself. Right, he said, dismissing it. But the reality is you have something Andrea needs. And family helps family. The table went quiet. I looked around. Mom was nodding. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but silent. Andrea stared at her pie, like it held the secrets of the universe. What exactly are you suggesting, I asked, even though I already knew. Dad didn't hesitate. You sign the house over to Andrea. Just like that. You're single, Mom added. No kids. You can live anywhere. Get an apartment. Something practical. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It burst out of me, sharp and disbelieving. You want me to give Andrea my house? Not give, Mom corrected quickly. We'd help you with first and last month's rent, somewhere nice. I own a house, I said. Why would I trade that for an apartment? Because your sister needs it more, Dad said, his voice sharpening. She has a baby coming. You're established. Independent. You can afford to rent. I can afford to rent because I don't, I said. Because I own a house that I paid for. It's just a house, Mom said. Family is more important than property. Then why doesn't family help Andrea buy her own house, I asked. You paid for her college, her car. Let her live here rent-free multiple times. Why not help with a down payment? We would if we could, Dad said, which I knew was a lie. But we're not in a position right now. This is the solution that makes sense. For who I asked, not for me. Think about the baby, Andrea said suddenly. Her first words in minutes. Don't you want your niece or nephew to have a good home? I also want to have a home, I said. Preferably the one I bought. Andrea finally looked at me. Come on. You know how hard it is right now. I'm trying to do the right thing. I understand you want my house, I said. What I don't understand is why you think you're entitled to it. Dad's voice went cold. Is that what you think this is? Asking would be one thing, I said. This is a demand. Mom's voice tightened. We're asking you to consider what's best for the family, to put your sister's needs first. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Like I always have. The table went dead silent. Dad stared at me. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, standing up, because I'm not having this conversation. Sit down, Dad said. We're not done. Yes, we are, I replied. I'm not signing over my house. End of story. Just think about it, Andrea said quietly. That's all we're asking. I looked at her, really looked. She honestly believed this was reasonable. Let me think about it, I said. Then I walked out. The entire drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Not from rage would have been easier, but from disbelief. The kind that makes your chest feel hollow like something fundamental just cracked open. They'd sat me down, fed me my favorite meal, and asked me to give away my house like it was an extra coat in the closet. When I pulled into my driveway, I didn't get out right away. I just sat there staring at the front of my house, the porch light I'd installed myself, the flower bed I'd replanted last spring, every improvement I'd chipped away at after long days at work. And they wanted it, because Andrea needed it more. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and stood in the living room for a long time. Then I made a decision. The next morning, I called a locksmith. I had every lock changed. Front door, back door, side entrance, garage. It cost me $300 and took 3 hours. The locksmith, an older guy named Frank, didn't ask questions. He just worked. I kept the old locks in a box in my garage in case I ever needed proof. While Frank worked, I drove to the hardware store and bought a real no trespassing sign. Not a polite one. A big, official-looking sign that made it clear I wasn't joking. I mounted it at the end of my driveway where no one could miss it. I took a photo, time-stamped. Then I started locking down everything else. I called my bank and froze my accounts for large transactions, put verbal authorization on anything significant, called my mortgage company and added a password, called the county recorder's office and placed a fraud alert on my deed. The clerk, Patricia, walked me through it like she'd seen this movie before. $15, best money I ever spent. I scanned every document I owned, deed, title, mortgage paperwork, and locked the originals in a fireproof safe. Changed every password I had. Checked my credit report. I knew my parents. If they thought something was for Andrea's own good, they'd justify anything. 2 days passed. Then Dad showed up. I saw his car through the window, watched him try his old key, watched confusion turn into irritation. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. New locks, he asked. Yep. Why? My house. My locks. His jaw tightened. You really think I'd try to get in without permission? I think you'd do whatever you thought was necessary, I said. That's what you think of your own father. That's what 30 years of experience tells me. He shook his head. We raised you better than this. You raised me to work for what I want, I said. That's what I did. Andrea needs that house, he snapped. She needs a house, I corrected, not mine. He stared at the no trespassing sign. You think that's necessary? Based on this conversation, yes. You've changed, he said. Good, I replied. He left without another word. That night, Mom called, crying. Real tears, or at least convincing ones. She worried about the baby, about Andrea's future. I stayed calm, suggested she help Andrea directly. But your house is perfect, she said. Then they should find one like it. She tried guilt, manipulation, everything. I didn't budge. When she hung up, I knew this wasn't over. Andrea texted me that night. It was a long message, the kind that looks carefully written and rewritten before being sent. She told me she'd always looked up to me, that she knew things between us hadn't always been perfect, but she thought we'd grown past it. She said she was scared, that she was trying to do right by her baby. She even offered to pay rent, said we could treat my house like a temporary rental until she and Marcus could afford to buy it from me. I read it once, then again, and I didn't respond, because none of that changed the core problem. She didn't want help. She wanted my house. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. The kind that makes you feel like something's gathering momentum behind the scenes. On Monday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman introduced herself as a real estate attorney, helping my family with a property transfer. She said she just needed to verify some information. I told her I wasn't transferring anything and hung up. Then I called the county recorder's office again and confirmed that no one could file anything related to my property without my physical signature and 2 forms of ID. Patricia sounded relieved I'd called. "You're doing everything right," she said. Tuesday afternoon, Andrea's boyfriend Marcus showed up at my door alone. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, nervous hands shoved into his jacket pockets. Against my better judgment, I let him in, but I didn't offer him a seat. He stood awkwardly in my living room, glancing around. "I didn't know they were going to ask you for the house," he said. "That dinner, I swear I thought it was just family catching up." I believed him. "I get why you said no," he continued. "I would have too. Andrea's just panicking. My parents. Yours. Everyone's in her ear telling her she's already failing." "That's not my responsibility," I said. I know he nodded quickly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for the ambush. It wasn't right. It was the first apology I'd heard from anyone involved. After he left, I felt something unexpected. Not guilt, but clarity. They weren't going to stop. Wednesday morning, I got a certified letter from a law firm. My hands actually trembled when I opened it. It was a formal request for family mediation regarding a property dispute. Legal language, polite threats, an attempt to force me into a room where they could pressure me again. I called my lawyer, the same one who'd handled my home purchase. He laughed. "They don't have a leg to stand on," he said. "You don't have to agree to mediation." "Send them something," I said. He did. Firm, clear. Any further harassment would be grounds for a restraining order. That night, my doorbell rang at 11 p.m. Andrea stood on my porch. I didn't open the door right away. I watched Andrea through the camera on my phone, standing on my porch in the dark, her shoulders slumped, hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired, pregnant and overwhelmed, and desperate in a way that was almost painful to see. Almost. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway. "It's 11. "I know," she said quickly. "I'm sorry. I need to talk to you." "No," she swallowed. 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she didn't deserve to take up space. I stayed standing. She talked about how scared she was, how everyone expected her to have everything figured out, how she felt like a failure already. "I never wanted it to go this far," she said quietly. "You sat there and let them ask me to give up my house," I said. "You didn't say a word." She didn't argue, didn't deny it. "I thought you'd say yes," she admitted. That was the moment something in me hardened permanently. The next morning, Dad crossed a line he couldn't uncross. I woke up to a notification from my backyard camera. He was standing in my yard, just standing there, looking at my house. I went outside. "What are you doing?" He turned oddly calm. "Just curious. Looked up what you paid for this place, and what it's worth now." My stomach twisted. "You've done well," he said. "Andrea could never afford this." "I'm not giving her my house," I said. He looked around. The roof, the siding, the yard. Shame to see all this go to waste. The way he said it made my blood run cold. "Are you threatening my house?" "I'm just saying things happen," he replied. Pipes burst. Fires start. I stared at him. "Get out." He hesitated, then left. I called my insurance company immediately and doubled my coverage. Installed cameras on every angle of the house. Documented everything. Took photos of every room. Called a friend who's a police officer and asked what I should do if things escalated. That night I barely slept. And I knew without a doubt that this was no longer about family. It was about control. "Stop!" Type continue when ready for Part 7. Consequences. Part 7. Consequences. I blocked their numbers the next morning. All of them. Mom, Dad, Andrea, even Marcus, though that one felt unfair. But I was done having my phone turned into a weapon. If they wanted to reach me, they could send something in writing. Something that left a paper trail. The silence that followed was strange at first. For years, my family had been a constant background noise, opinions, expectations, disappointment wrapped in concern. Without it, my house felt quieter, not emptier, quieter. Like a room after a storm finally passes. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. No surprise visits, no letters, no legal threats. I started to believe maybe they'd finally accepted reality. Then I got an email alert from the county recorder's office. Someone had requested copies of my property deed. My heart pounded as I called Patricia back. "It was your father," she said gently. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. He sent another letter, this one far less polite. It spelled out harassment charges, fraud warnings, and the possibility of criminal consequences if they tried anything again. That stopped the requests. 2 days before Andrea's move, I came home from work and found my mother sitting in her car at the end of my driveway. She didn't try to get out, didn't ring the bell. She just sat there watching my house. I pulled into my garage and went inside without acknowledging her. I watched her through the camera feed as she stayed there for nearly 2 hours, just staring. Like if she waited long enough, I'd change my mind. I didn't. The day Andrea moved into her new place, Mom sent a group text. Photos of a small condo, boxes stacked everywhere, a half-finished nursery. So proud of Andrea for doing this on her own, the message read. I didn't respond. When the baby was born 3 months later, I got another photo, a tiny red-faced newborn wrapped in a blanket. I stared at it for 5 seconds, then typed, "Congratulations," and left the chat. A week later, Mom invited me to meet my niece, a small gathering, just family. I didn't answer. That Sunday at 2 p.m., I was at the hardware store buying supplies for my bathroom renovation. A month after the baby was born, I ran into Andrea at the grocery store. It was one of those almost collisions in the produce section, shopping carts, nearly clipping each other before we both stopped short. She had the baby strapped to her chest in a carrier, tiny and asleep, wearing a soft pink hat. Andrea looked thinner, tired, different. We stared at each other for a beat too long. "Hey," she said. "Hey." The baby made a small sound in her sleep, a quiet little sigh. Andrea shifted her weight, instinctively protective without thinking. For a split second, I saw her not as my older sister, not as the golden child, but just as a woman figuring things out in real time. "She's cute," I said. It felt like the safest thing to say. "Thanks," Andrea replied. There were a dozen things she clearly wanted to say after that. I could see them lining up behind her eyes. Apologies, explanations, maybe even an ask. I didn't give them space to come out. "I've got to go," I said. "Take care." I grabbed the apples I needed and walked away. I heard my name once behind me. I didn't turn around. 2 weeks later, Marcus showed up alone. I recognized him on the camera and almost didn't open the door, but something told me this wasn't another attempt to negotiate. I stayed in the doorway. "5 minutes," he said. "That's all." I checked my watch. "You've got 5. Andrea wasn't doing well, he told me. Not because of money, not because of the condo, but because she knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She knew she'd let our parents speak for her. She knew she'd hoped I'd sacrifice something huge so she wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. She wants to apologize, he said. She just doesn't know how to do it without asking for something at the same time. "That's not my problem," I said calmly. He nodded. "I figured you'd say that." Then he said something unexpected. "For what it's worth, I think you were right. What they asked you to do was insane. That mattered more than I expected. She's a good mom," he added. "The baby's happy. We're making it work." I'm glad I said, and I meant it. After he left, I locked the door and leaned back against it for a long moment. I thought about everything I'd been accused of being. Cold, selfish, unreasonable. I thought about how easily those labels get thrown at people who stop making themselves smaller for the comfort of others. I didn't lose my family. I lost the illusion that love was supposed to come with conditions. What I kept was my house, my peace, my sense of self. I kept the thing I'd built with my own hands and the boundary that finally made it safe. Some people inherit stability. Some of us have to defend it.